Broadcast.
Right, so what happens? Hi, so this is David Gilroy here on our deck at our office in Bristol. So I'm going to give it a minute or two and just see how many people connect with us this afternoon. For those of you here a couple of weeks ago, we did a 40-minute long Q&A session on law firm marketing. And today we're changing it slightly. We're sitting outdoors because it's quite a bright afternoon, a bit grey here in Bristol. We'll get interrupted by some seagull noise, I suspect. And we're going to be talking about how you deal with negative sentiment and negative review online, particularly around social media sites and review sites. So again, we're going to give people a couple of minutes to get online. Rich is going to let me know. I've got my producer Rich with me today. He's behind the camera, so you won't be able to see him. But if you've got any questions about this topic, you know what to do. Just type them into the app. And then we'll take care of them that way. We haven't got a Twitter feed set up here today, so if you do have questions, then you'll need to put them into the Periscope app. So Rich, we've got a few people following us?
11.
We've got 11 people. Okay, so we're going to make a start. Because if people want to show up, then they want to show up. So reviews online. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm actually going to show you in Blue Peter style something I made earlier. And this is a piece of work that we did, and hopefully everybody can see that, for a research project. And what we found is that when people do reviews on review sites, they're far more likely to be positive, massively, than if they just comment on other social media platforms like Facebook or Twitter. So those were the actual numbers. And what we also reviewed was law firms with over 800 had a Google Plus page, and a very small number had reviews on Google Plus. So when we think about the mechanics of reviews, we'll come back to that later, but let's deal with the sentiment issue. So what we found when we did this study was that if people are going to bother to review you on a review site, and by that I mean Google Plus or Google, Trustpilot, FIFO, maybe it's Legally Better, there are a number of these review sites, some that are generic, some that relate just to law firms. So if a client of yours is going to bother to do that, they're typically going to be positive, and that's what the data showed unequivocally. Now, when we thought about why that would be, if we think about a client who's going to comment on a law firm, if they're going to complain, they're probably going to complain to you directly. Let's face it, most law firms are not Vodafone, okay? If they phone you up with a complaint, you have an SRA process that you need to follow, you're going to take it seriously. They don't just go into some, massive unwashed customer service department. So that's probably their first recourse. If they want to get a bit shouty online, again, what the data showed is that they're going to do that on something like Twitter or Facebook with some kind of complaint. And we all know, we've had clients who complain about the smallest things, and a lot of clients who've got complaints that are not necessarily valid. If the house sale doesn't go through because the other people backed out, technically that's not a problem of yours on the law firm. So if they're going to go to a review site, bearing in mind what lawyers do for a living, which is the law, I think it's no surprise that most people will give you a positive review, okay? Because if they're giving you a negative review, it's, I think, perceived to be more permanent than just doing a tweet, or more permanent than putting something on Facebook. Even though those are both permanent records, when you go into a review site, you typically have to log in, you have to create an account, it's got to be more considered. And as a result of that, it's no surprise to me when we did the research that we found that most of them were positive. So what's the downside of that in terms of social media? Some of you who are listening in today almost certainly have had some kind of complaints on Facebook and Twitter. And I was working with a firm recently and in a training seminar that we were doing, and a week later I got an email saying, David, thanks for the training last week. Because of what you said, I was brave enough to just leave the complaint on Facebook, respond to it and deal with it. And I think that's the way you have to do it. What you can't just go is go deleting things because they've tagged you on a Facebook page or they've tweeted about you. You can't get that stuff taken down. You have to deal with it, and you have to deal with it in a positive way. Now, the number one thing is to try and get that complaint offline. So what we mean by that is you have to respond in social media to let people know that you've been doing it. But then you try and get it into your offline process. Now, whether that's using a form on your website to get people to fill it in, whether it's you phoning them and discussing it by phone, either way, you want to deal with that offline where you can and not get into a slanging match online. Now, we saw the news a few weeks ago, the terrible news from Alton Towers, and a couple of law firms tweeting about that. And if you look at how much bad press they got about that, it was phenomenal. and more for them. They should have known not to do it. And I know one particular firm who threw a quote-unquote young member of staff under a bus, which I don't think was necessarily fair. But a client of ours recently had a complaint on Facebook, and so they just dealt with it online. So the key thing about that when you're dealing with it is you are trying to get it offline as soon as possible and deal with it in email, by phone, go and see the client if they're close to you, and resolve it as you would, just as if they'd walked through the door with a complaint. This is the big difference though. Once you know the complaint has been properly dealt with, then you need to go and what we call close the loop online. So what I mean by that is go back to the Facebook post and put another comment. Reply again to the tweet in the structure of the conversation so that if somebody does come across that record subsequently, that they can see there was a complaint, that you acknowledged it, and then that you closed it, that you said, sorry, Mrs. Jones, that you had to complain via Twitter, glad we could sort it out for you, we'd love to work with you again. So the key thing is make sure when people find that in social media that they can see that that loop has been closed. So I think those are the key things about that. Now, what about the mechanics of getting reviews? It is difficult. You may have done testimonials for people on LinkedIn yourself in a professional capacity. So depending on the volume of matters that you're dealing with, you should be asking everybody to do a review for you. I reckon if you ask 100 people, maybe you're doing 100 matters a month, when those matters get closed, you ask 100 people to do a review, I would mix and match between the different review sites. I would have an account on FIFO, I would have an account on Trustpilot, I would have an account for your Google Plus page, and share that around. So 30 to one, 30 to another, and if you can get 10% of people to do a review, that would be fantastic. You've all seen it yourselves. You go to Google, you do a search for a restaurant. If that restaurant's got positive reviews, you are more likely to go. There's been a local consumer survey done recently by Bright Local. It was done in the US. They researched about 3,000 consumers, 92% of whom said they pay attention to reviews when they're shopping on a local basis. Now, this was particularly around local. Bright Local is a localized SEO tracking and development tool, so they focus on local. But I think that's true nationally. Whether you're looking for a restaurant, I'm going to Wrexham next week on a road trip, I'm looking for a restaurant in Wrexham. If I'm using Google or Yelp or TripAdvisor or whatever, I'm going to focus on reviews. So I think you want to be doing that, making sure that you are spreading your reviews around. I think Rich might be telling me you've got a question coming.
Yeah, sorry, the question's now just disappeared. Should lawyers be worried about reviews from what I could see before it disappeared? Okay,
so if that was a question you asked, should lawyers be worried about reviews? I think the answer is no. Are you going to get negative reviews? Yes, there's a chance. But as this data showed, when we looked at review sites, 77% of all the reviews were positive. That's the green thumbs up if you're not sure. Okay, so you are possibly going to get some reviews that are negative. But for me, if you start filtering out and try and say, well, that case didn't go very well, that one went slightly over budget, let's not get some feedback, and reviews are just an extension of what we now do in our business for our clients using our Lawly client satisfaction survey tool. That gives you satisfaction data and benchmarking, and the plan for that is to try and integrate with review sites. But you need to make that process easier. What you can't be doing is writing your own reviews, obviously. You can't be rekeying them yourselves onto some websites because you do need to create a user account. You could create an account in the client's name, but I'm not necessarily sure that sits very comfortably with everybody. But the key thing with reviews is you ask. If you want customer feedback, you need to ask. But I think you need to ask a sensible number of people. There is no obvious ratio. The one that I see a lot is National Accident Helpline. You do any kind of search for them in Google, they've got something like 450 plus 4 or 5 star reviews. Now, they're not reviewing the outcome of the legal case. They're actually getting people to review the call handling process at NAH. I assume that's what's happening because they're not doing the law. You've seen it yourselves. You leave a restaurant, if you booked online, an hour afterwards, you've checked out, you're going to get a review. If you stay in a hotel, the minute you've left the hotel, you get an email asking for a review. So is it a degree of people kind of thinking, I'm all reviewed out? Yes, I think there is. But that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be asking. As I say, I reckon if you can get 10% of people to review your case, that'll be great. If you do 100 cases a month, you're going to get 10 reviews a month. We'll sit here in a year's time, you've got 120 plus, which will be a fab number. But again, the key thing is spread them around a number of sites. So we're about 10 minutes in. I was going to say I was going to cap this at 15 minutes. The plan is to do a Periscope session like this every Friday. Hopefully we're going to have a clean orange shirt each week. Rich is actually going to be doing it next week, but we'll do the same alert. If you haven't seen the numbers, if you go to the Conscious Solutions blog, we did a whole write-up of the first Periscope session we did a couple of weeks ago. And I know there have been a couple of law firms who have been doing them since. So if you want to get some experience of this, feel free to follow us or try it yourself. Because what can go wrong? Seagulls have not been dumping on me this afternoon, so that was the biggest worry about doing it outdoors. So if you've got any other questions, ask them now. If not, we're going to wrap up in the next minute or so, and I wish everybody a happy weekend. Rich, anything come in?
No, nothing. We had that one question come in, but it's faded away.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for everybody's time this afternoon. Have a really great weekend, and we'll be recording this. We'll put it onto YouTube. If you want to do a quick playthrough, then you go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Conscious Solutions.
Melan wants to know, can you alert them when there's another session, please?
Yeah, Melan will be doing that each Friday morning. We're going to do it regularly Friday at 4 o'clock, and we'll be emailing out just one email on the Friday morning, because as you've all seen, if you're following us on the Periscope app, you get an alert when we start broadcasting. So if you're available, then that'll be great. Hope to see you again soon.
Hi, Clive, as well.
Hi, Clive. Is it sunny in Lewis? I'm guessing it's a bit sunnier than it is up here, but you never know. So.
Alison says, great tips, thank you.
Thanks, Alison. And I'm not sure which Alison, because I can't see the tweet addresses here.
Alison Lob 1.
Okay.
And yes, Clive says it is sunny. Milan says, thank you very much, David.
Okay, that's great. Gang, we're going to sign off, so have a good weekend. Bye.